Craft with me while I tell you the story of how I found out I was raped at 2 years old. So, today I'm going to be doing this little felt stocking kit. They give you the felt, you just have to cut it out, sew it all together. And I will be talking about how about a year ago today, I recovered a repressed memory that would lead me to learn from someone who was forced to witness it that I was orally raped by my older cousin when I was 2 years old and the cousin was 10 years old. And so I know that that's an upsetting thing, that's an upsetting topic. If you do not want to hear about that, please do not watch this video. I will say that I will not go into details about exactly what happened during that assault, but I will tell you how I found out about it and how I have just been, you know, trying to live ever since I found out. So, for me, my story regarding this started August of 2024. It was a random Monday night where it was after work, after dinner. My fiance and I were just kind of hanging out on the couch. I was reading a book, and I was also just thinking about our future, trying to plan our future, what house we would want in the future, how many bedrooms we would need if we wanted to have one kid or two kids, stuff like that. And so that made me think about how the homes that I grew up in were arranged. And so, like, for example, my mom had an apartment for us growing up where there were three bedrooms. She had two kids, she had her, and then she had my aunt. And so that was kind of the arrangement. Versus my other aunt, we'll call her Aunt Gladys. Um, she did not live with us. She had her own family. And so she lived in a two-bedroom house with her husband and their two kids, who were my younger cousins. And during this night where I'm just reading and thinking about these houses, I'm thinking about Aunt Gladys's house. And I can just envision, the whole house in my mind. I've had a pretty good memory. Like, I've always had a pretty good memory, especially with childhood. A lot of times I'll joke that, like, I wish I could forget more. And so when I thought about this house, it was very vivid. Like, in my mind, I could walk through everything. Like, I could see their green carpet and feel how it was kind of like crunchy, like it wasn't like a soft carpet. Um, I could walk through their kitchen into their little like family den room, through my aunt's bedroom that connected to it, where she had just like a little touch dim light. Do you remember those where you touch it and it gets brighter or darker? I loved that as a kid. And that connected to a bathroom, one of those bathrooms with doors at either side. So the bathroom connected my aunt's bedroom with my younger cousin's bedroom. My younger cousins are just a year apart. They're both boys, and they shared their bedroom. They had a big mural of Barney on their wall. It's actually very cute. And then you would walk back out of their room, and you had kind of completed a circle from the living room that you initially step into. And so in my mind, I can see all of these things, except that when I imagined walking out of my younger cousin's bedroom and I looked to the right, I could see the living room. And when I looked to the left, I could just see darkness, like just pure black. It wasn't even like, oh, there was a wall there or there was a hallway there that I don't know what was there. It was truly like an abyss. And I just remember my brain kind of flagging at this instance, like, hey, like something's not right actually. There couldn't have only been two bedrooms at this house because your aunt had another son. You have an older cousin. He, his dad was never in the picture, and so he couldn't have been living anywhere else but with your aunt, her then husband, and your two younger cousins. And so the question formed in my mind of, was there a third bedroom? And once that question came in my mind, like my entire body was just flooded with fear and panic. Like I felt frozen. I felt my heart racing so much. Like I had never felt such primal fear, honestly. And I just knew in that moment that something really, really terrible happened to me in that bedroom. If there was a third bedroom, something really terrible had to have happened to me there for me to just completely erase it from my mind, especially a mind that like remembers so much. To just completely cut this out, it had to be bad. And I knew, I kind of like extra knew that it had to be bad because this older cousin, he was about 8 years older than me. And I had always remembered these two instances from when I was about 6 years old. And so he would have been 14. Like, he would have been plenty old enough to know not to do these things. But those two instances when I was 6 was more uh, like very, very tame instances, but they were also still sexual abuse towards me. And I say they were tame just in the sense that, like, they made me even question for decades whether they were abuse or not. And when I brought it up to a therapist, even in 2022, I asked her if it was abuse. She was a student therapist, I will say, and she said she had to ask her, like, professor or guide or whoever. And so it wasn't until the next session that she confirmed that it was abuse. And so that's why I think it was like just kind of a borderline case in my mind of like, I don't think those things should have happened, but are they bad enough for me to like say that my cousin did bad things to me, basically? So because I knew those two more minor incidents happened when I was 6, I knew that whatever repressed memory of this bedroom and whatever fear I felt in my body wasn't just a fluke. It wasn't just a coincidence. I mean, to repress the memory of your abuser's bedroom is very significant. And so that night, I kind of just like was very, very adamant on it. Felt like a mystery, honestly. It felt like a mystery that I had to figure out. And I've always really liked mystery books from when I was a kid. And so I think it felt like I was some kind of detective here and I needed to find this bedroom and find out what happened. And so I looked through all of our family photos that I had access to. And I finally found a picture, like at the right angle inside of that house, that confirmed that there's a bedroom door where my mind had just seen dark, black abyss. And so there was, in fact, a third bedroom, and it was his, and all of that. And so the next day, I was still in my detective mode, and so I called my mom and I called my brother, and I just wanted to know if they had any memories of like me acting strange around that bedroom or that incident. And my brother said that he didn't know anything about that bedroom specifically, but that he did know something about my cousin basically doing something to me. And so we arranged to talk like in a few days when when I would be off of work. And so if it was very upsetting, at least I wouldn't have to go back to work. And to give him, I think, some time to I don't know, think about how he wanted to tell me. And so we decided to talk on Friday because I had already asked for that day off of work. And Friday before our call, I will say I spent a lot of money. I was very nervous. I didn't know what to do. I bought every single healthy coping mechanism I could think of. I bought myself paints so I could do arts and crafts. I bought those little diamond art kits for bookmarks. Highly recommend those. I bought myself slime to play with. I bought myself like a little aromatherapy thing to stay grounded. Bought myself a weighted plush toy, which I will say that that one was the best out of all of those things, and I do still cuddle with my sloth, my weighted sloth, who I named Mole. And I just waited to talk to my brother basically. And when I did, he told me that when we were younger, there was a time where we did a sleepover at Aunt Gladys's house where she left me as a 1 or 2 year old, my brother as a 6 or 7 year old boy, and her eldest son, well, only son at that time, and her son, who would have been 9 or 10 years old. She left us all in the living room to have a sleepover, just unsupervised. And so it was that night where my cousin basically told my brother, like, hey, look at this, and made my brother witness what my cousin did to me. And honestly, when my brother told me the story, he did tell me like exactly what happened, but in my mind, I didn't make the connection that what had happened was rape for a few hours. I will say that I don't think I wanted to, face that reality. Obviously, I didn't if I repressed the memory, but I think a small part of my brain was still holding out hope. Like, we can still fight this, even though we have all, like, the facts now. So I knew what happened, but it wasn't until hours later that I Googled, basically, the definition of rape, and I was like, oh, fuck. And it was just really weird. It was really weird to go from one identity of yourself, one belief of yourself that you have 1 minute, and then have that change completely another. Because all of a sudden now I'm a rape victim or a survivor of rape. All of a sudden I'm all of these things that I had never thought about myself. And things it really didn't seem real. It didn't seem like something that was actually real about myself. Like, that felt like a story that I was being told about someone else. And in my mind, I was like, that is a terrible thing. And that terrible thing didn't happen to me. No, it happened to someone else. And honestly, I've spent the last year coming to terms with the fact that that did in fact happen to me. And it hasn't been until like the last few weeks that I've even been able to say it in such simple terms as I was raped at 2 years old. I remember that from the beginning, that was the one thing that kept repeating in my head, and it was like screaming in my head, like I was raped at 2 years old. But whenever I actually wanted to say those words to anyone, whenever I wanted to just like very simply say how fucked up it is that I was raped at 2 years old, I couldn't say it. I had to say something really bad happened to me, or I had to say that I was a victim of like child sexual assault. And I was, but that's not what I wanted to say. And I think it's really important that I am able to say it now. That was me being able to say that I was raped at 2 years old was one of the indicators to me personally that I was ready to share my experience and my story more broadly, because I can say it without questioning myself. I can say it without wondering if someone's going to say, no, you weren't, or going to question me because they can question me. That's fine. They don't have to believe me, but that's not going to make me question myself. That's not going to make me doubt the fact that I know that I was raped at 2 years old. And so that's how I found out that that terrible thing happened to me. Um, Afterwards, after finding that out, it's been a really long journey of trying to deal with that knowledge. I already struggled with depression. I mean, no, looking back on it, I was just like, yeah, of course, I struggled with depression. Um, and so this really sent me into a tailspin. I went to a full-time like mental health treatment center, basically like the most intense you can get without or like with still being able to go home every day, and took a lot of time off of work, and I've just been doing a lot of a lot of journaling, a lot of deeply intensive therapy, and a lot of trying to feel safe in my body for like the first time ever. And I'm happy to go into everything that I've done to basically keep living after finding this out about myself. I guess I don't know if people will understand how finding this out about myself made it hard to keep living, but in my mind, I was like, how can someone live after that happens to them? And I think what's crazy is like, obviously, I lived for plenty of years after that actually happening to me, but it didn't feel like it because I didn't know that happened to me. And so now that I do know it happened to me, that's when it felt impossible to keep going. But I am very, very glad that I did keep going, and I hopefully can share with everyone how I did that, what program I went, well, not exactly what program I went to, but I guess like how I looked into programs, how mine went, the follow up therapy that I've done afterwards, and all of that. And honestly, the journey to recovering this memory did not start on that day where I was reading the book and I remembered the third bedroom. Like, that was when my body or my brain finally decided that I was ready for that information. But that's because of all of the work I had been putting in previously. Really, what was before that was an entire year of this really intense journaling where I would sob every single time because I had developed like really, really severe debilitating migraines, and it was the only thing that I found helped was actually dealing with my emotions that I had repressed for so long. And so it was a year of journaling before that, and before that, it was years of therapy. Like, I started mental health treatment when I was 19. And so it was at least 11 years of that kind of like treatment and struggling with mental health before I was able to recover this memory and really fully understand myself and my history. And there's also plenty of other traumas from my childhood that I would love to talk about as well. I do have CPTSD, so very happy to tell you all the complexities of that. And overall, I'm just really grateful for anyone who listens to this story. I know it's a hard topic, and I wouldn't fault anyone for just not wanting to know these things because they don't want to acknowledge that these things happen. But I do appreciate people who allow me to tell them my story because it helps me every single time. It might be really hard to to tell my story and to say these things, but I always do feel better afterwards. It feels less shameful. It feels like I'm not hiding things. And that's what I want to do. I want to not be hiding things. So, thank you for listening to the story. Thank you for watching my terrible crafts. I did 2 times speed on this video, and yet I still only get 3 stars done in this craft. So, it's gonna be a long time before we finish this stocking, but hopefully you will stick along for the ride. I promise in the next one I will do more than 3 stars.